going to take some getting used to.
Hello, so my name is Tony Farmer. I'm a young person in long-term recovery, and what that means for me is I haven't found it necessary to use any drugs or alcohol in the last two years and 9 months. I am with Young People in Recovery, the Kerrville chapter, and sober fun is something that we absolutely would not be, we can't be without. You know, our organization is centered around young people, and young people center around having fun events and doing fun things in their recovery. And some really, really cool things that we've done. You know, we try to make everything that we do, whether it's a chapter meeting or an actual social event, have some incorporated piece of fun activity involved in it. We just feel like we reach more people that way. It gets people involved. It's a lot better to be actively engaged in the chapter that you're participating in by enjoying yourself, whether you're in a business meeting or cutting up in that business meeting, or whether you're out sharing what advocacy is about in the community or doing a community event. Some of the things that we've done in the past, we just recently had a showing or a screening of the Anonymous People in the park there in Kerrville, and we had a sober bar affiliated with that YPR facilitated and coordinated, and it was a huge success. We had members of the community that were not necessarily in recovery, but were interested in recovery and wanted to know more about recovery, and that came out and participated. And for the size of the town of Kerrville, we have about 25,000 people in our community, and we had about 150 plus people there. So we were really, really stoked about that. We've done bowling events. We did, one of our chapter leads went to the National Leadership Conference for YPR, and we were doing some fundraising for her to be able to go to that event. And so we decided to do a volleyball fundraiser and got a bunch of teams together, and had a registration fee, and then the winning team got a small prize. But I think it's really, really important that when we get into recovery, we got into recovery to change the way we were living. And when the way we were living before, there may have been fun in the beginning, but it began to get less and less fun. And so we really try to make sure that the people that we're incorporating in our events, that they understand that that they're wanted there, that they're needed, and the best way to show that is to make sure that they're having a good time. And so that's what we're doing in Kerrville, and it seems to work. And I've learned from some of the spearheads in the advocacy movement. YPR Kerrville didn't come up with these ideas. We got it from organizations like Joseph's organization and the Sober Recreation Committee organization. So lots of different organizations have spearheaded this, and we just learned from it.
Very cool. Thank you. So in addition to being your moderator, I'm also part of the panel. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Center for Students in Recovery. Our mission is kind of twofold. We provide a supportive community for students in recovery right in the heart of campus. But then on top of that, we also want to ensure that our students are finding academic success and a genuine college experience while abstaining from alcohol and other drugs. So that genuine college experience is really key, and to execute that, we do stuff like sober tailgates, stuff like sober dances, stuff like going to South by Southwest, which if you're a student at UT Austin, that's a quintessential part of the experience of being here. You're really missing out if you go all 4 years without ever going to South by. So we actually brought up or met up with Tony's group, YPR Kerrville, for this last South by Southwest, and as a group went to a free South by showcase, and we're able to kind of be in this really busy environment, but hold each other accountable and be supportive of one another in our sobriety in that kind of environment. So it's really cool. So yeah, we do a lot of different types of activities with our students, but a huge component of that is fun and is regular old college life. And oops, getting tangled on all this stuff. Here you go.
My name is John, and I'm an alcoholic addict. And what that kind of means for me is that I'm inside of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm part of TXCYPAA. And TXCYPAA is the Texas State Conference of Young People in AA. The reason we call it of Young People in AA is because it's hosted by young people, but it's for everyone inside of the recovery community. And that's one thing we're really trying to stress for the first time this year, because we've always been separate from before. And we really want to be just a part of every recovery community and not just, the young people doing their own thing. One of the things that we got to do for fun inside of recovery yesterday was a drag show. I just so happened to be the runner-up inside of that competition. We've done talent shows, we've done water balloon fights, we've done capture the flag. All these really cool things that we get some of these treatment centers out there for, some of the newer people inside recovery out there for, and just show them that it's a really good time. YPAA was there for me whenever I really didn't have another place to go. I didn't really fit in with a lot of the older people in recovery, or some of the old-timer meetings as they call them. It gave me a place where I could relate to the kids that they started off using at a young age like I did. And I needed that. I needed somebody that I could look up to that was around the same age as me as well. I needed those mentors. And I found that. I actually got involved with TXCYPAA over at CSR because we had our host committee meeting there. And one of the first things that was told to me that kind of got me to get going is they nominated me for a position. And one of the secretary for the conference now nominated me for this H&I chair, which is the Hospitals and Institutions chair, the TICPC chair, which is public outreach and community outreach. So it's a long story. But what she had told me, the way to get involved is that you're going to form these bonds with people that you're never going to lose track of your whole life. There's going to be some friends that you're going to be able to keep forever. And that was really something I was looking forward to because I never got that. The next day we went out and had lunch together as a host committee. I had never seen that before, and we're hoping that we can show people the same way that we were kind of brought into this ourselves. So that's what we're hoping.
My name is Michael Ware, and I am recovered from the disease of addiction. My surviving date is January 29th of 2002. And I'm here representing the Sober Recreation Committee of Austin. We've been in as a committee for under a year. Our first event was last November. Co-founder and I were attending a softball tournament in Houston, and we finally came together and decided we now have the community and the public population in the Austin area to form this committee. And we've modeled it a lot after Houston Recreation Committee. And we host activities. We've done a couple of bowling events, and November we have scheduled our 7th softball tournament in the calendar year. So the definition of fun for me in my recovery has been fellowship. And I saw in my own personal recovery after a couple of years that my life had become meetings, work, and I had no other avenue or outlet for fun. And my life was becoming stupid, boring, and glum, like the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous refers to, and I needed to find something else. So through a series of events, I personally have found recreational softball with one of the league nights, and I felt stable enough in my own recovery where I could go out and play beer league softball with some people that I knew that respected my recovery enough to where when offered a beer, not if, it became a matter of when, I could easily say no. Now, could I have done that in the beginning? No. So one of the things that Lou and I, our goal and our mission as Sober Recreation Committee is to focus on that new person and show them you can come out and participate and not have that person come up to you and offer you a beer and still be competitive but yet fun, and it's all about showing the newcomer, hey, we can have fun with sobriety. And if we have one person after all of our events that say, I had a lot of fun, I want to do that again, when's the next one? We know before we leave, usually the event, that specific event was a success. And that's our whole goal, is to put on events in the different types of recreation activities that are available. We just tapped into the surface. We're still young. And we know that there's all sorts of events on the horizon for us, and there is no place but growth for us with the support of the recovery communities and off-timers.
Thanks, Mike.
My name's Joseph Sanchez. I'm a personal and long-term recovery. I'm president and co-founder for the Recovery Alliance in Austin. Seems like I've given that kind of introduction a lot this weekend. So, one of my first interactions with having fun in recovery, I was in a residential recovery center. We went to a 12-step meeting Halloween dance. It was one of the rules that we couldn't go into the back alley of the facility and dumpster dive for anything. And it just so happened that we were operating in kind of a strip mall, and one of the businesses was like a second-hand store, and they had gotten rid of like some some Halloween costumes. So while one of my friends were on the watch for me, I did a little dumpster diving. I got my first Halloween costume in recovery, and it was 2 sizes too small, and it was this little scream outfit, right, a little bit and everything, and so got all gussied up and went to this dance. I'm like, yes, we're gonna have fun, and like everybody that was from the facility, we were all lined up against the wall. Nobody was dancing. Everybody was looking to great music, and nobody was dancing. And I was like, is this it? This is super lame, And coming from a place where it was bars and the club scene, I'm like, this is not attraction. This is not attraction at all. And there had to be a lot more. And luckily that same organization did a whole bunch of community events. They had Music Under the Stars out in El Paso, where it was music under the stars in a park, and with a whole bunch of people in recovery, and then a whole bunch of different holiday events. And I've learned that if you want the community to turn out for something, offer free food, and and we come out, add some good music, and there's nothing to stop us in that. So so with that in mind, I always try to keep in mind what does the recovery community want, and our nonprofit organization, we had this survey that we have on our website that we put out into the community, and we said, well, what do you want? Along with funding for detox and sober living and treatment, they wanted activities, fun activities. And so we talked about should we do a recovery dance? And then that popped into my mind. I'm like, recovery dance? It's like, it's gonna be like every wallflowers, good music, and nobody dancing. So and also too, how do we integrate and kind of advocate that there are recovery people or people in recovery out there having a good time and not drinking and doing drugs? Well, why isolate ourselves from the community, from society, from the city? So we integrate into society. So one of our first collaborative events was a global. So we put a whole bunch of organizations together, and we said, okay, we want this to be a whole organizational thing. So if each organization puts in $15-20, nobody has to pay for anything. We got shoes covered, we got bowling balls covered, we got food covered, boom. And it's in the community. It's not separate from, it's really, so yeah, we're having fun, but also too, we're advocating that we are, people do have fun in recovery. So I'm a huge advocate for, having fun in recovery, but in the public eye, last weekend? It was last weekend? This whole month is last weekend we did the first annual Recovery in the Park event. And, it was in it was in it was in east side of Boston in a neighborhood that I think, needed to hear that, recovery is out there. We do have fun in recovery. And, a lot of people turned out. Again, free food, live music. And we reached out to some organizations that were like, hey, come support, come, have a booth. And with usually in those situations where treatment centers and organizations come out and do booths, it's handing out the pamphlets and handing out, information that people are like, oh, great, can I have a free pen? And then, So what we wanted to do is we wanted to have fun. So we asked those organizations not to just hand out their information, but to have a game. So we had a lot of organizations get really creative. Pop the balloon, ski ball. SRC was out there doing disc golf and some other kind of long games and just organizations coming out and having fun. So we can have fun and be like, oh, by the way, guess what? I'm in recovery for this and such. You're like, oh my God, me too. And it turns into this whole like huge fellowship thing, and also too, it is contagious. We had members of that community come in and were like, hey, you got free food here? I'm like, yes. And it looks like you could benefit from some of the services that, these people around here are talking about. So, it has like a twofold purpose. And I think it's really important to not just have fun in recovery, but to have fun in recovery out loud, and in the community.
Thanks, Joseph, and thank you to all of our panelists. So I have some prepared questions that I was going to ask our panelists, but I also want to encourage all of you guys in the audience to just go ahead and jump in whenever something comes up that you want to ask. But to get us started, I actually want to piggyback off of something that Joseph was just touching on, and that's this issue of, holding ourselves apart from the greater Austin community or greater, Dallas community, wherever we're coming from. If we generally accept that a healthy recovery is going to be healthy out and about in everyday life, right? Whether or not, somebody is having a beer next to us at dinner. If we accept that, then, can you speak to how we make sure we're integrating our sober fun into the greater community of where we're living, and how we're kind of addressing the issue of sequestering ourselves away? Who would like to start us off? Okay, great.
I have it.
Good catch.
Came up this one. Yeah, exactly. I'll try to say this story and not get choked up, because I still get choked up when I say it. I spoke about going to Houston, and the team we formed was 4 years ago. SRC's only been in existence for a year. And two of a married couple that are on my co-ed softball team, we also, in those 4-year terms, started going to Denver on a regular basis to participate in their sober tournament that they have once a year. And the couple on my team, during that Denver trip, they were a member of my team because they're out on they have a family member that are in recovery. On that trip to Denver, they told me that because of the active members of 12-step recovery on my team, which is well over half of them, the inspiration that they provide and what they witnessed occurring for the good in our own personal recovery inspired them, and they had had a drop of alcohol in a year and a half. Now, they weren't alcoholic, they had it in the family, but our inspiration took the message to someone out in the community. Second part of the story I have to say about that is when we conduct the sober tournaments, we get certified ASA umpires because they know the rules. A lot of the players don't know the rules. Now, we fully explain to the umpires, here's your target participants. Some of these guys don't know the rules. And with kid gloves, when a batter steps into the batter's box or breaks the rule in some fashion, they will softly teach them the rules and not punish them right away for not knowing, like they would in a regular sanctioned tournament or during a league night game where everyone's expected to know the rules. As a result, every umpire that we've had come out, without fail, has come back and said, when's the next one? I've had more fun than I've ever had doing my sober events than the sober tournaments that we put on. To the point where they're asking us, when's the next one? When's the next one? Because they're getting excited about it. That connection back to the community, because a lot of these guys will be umpires during one night of the week, and they can take that message. And if they know a guy and they see a guy that's always drunk playing, and then one day he's not, they can relay that message. So that's how we're getting the information and our message out to the community.
So bringing the community to you.
As it has in turn taken it back out to them. It's really working. And I've seen results of that.
Who wants to speak next? All right.
So, one of the things that YPR Girdle, decided early on in our mission was the whole reason that we wanted to bring a YPR chapter to Girdle is to engage the community. Because we feel like that the community needs education, the community needs information, the community needs to know how we are stigmatized and how they can help assist in breaking that stigma. And so what we've really done is, we have really engaged our community partners, outside of the recovery spectrum. Outside of the recovery spectrum. We've made it a real big point for our leadership team to meet with, different organizations around town, whether it's banks or we've met with the hospitals, we've met with, several members of the Chamber of Commerce. We've gone, just to all of these different organizations and had one-on-one meetings with the administrators in these organizations explaining who we are, where we're at, what we're doing here in their community. Because, we come from a very small community where, a new organization comes to the town and everybody wants to know, what are you going to do here? And, is this something that we want to participate in? So, in addition to having those conversations, when we do these events, the first people that we invite, and we make a point to invite all these community partners that we have that are not necessarily direct members of the recovery community. Because, one of YPR's visions is to really reach out to our communities and create recovery ready communities. And so it's really amazing to see the community members. I had one family in particular, very similar story to Mike's, came in and had a family member that was dealing with some mental health issues, had grown up dealing with mental health, and they wanted to know a little bit more about our organization, so I invited them to a chapter meeting, and they have since come to pretty much every chapter meeting that we've had and gotten so involved, and it's just been really, really neat to see the relationships that have been built out of that. This family has then created relationships with all of our chapter members, all of our leads for sure, and then a majority of our chapter members, and just engaging them. And we have a family that that reached out to us who had a family member recently pass away of an overdose. And this family, unfortunately, their loved one never got to experience what recovery was all about. But because they were able to see what we were doing in the community, and they saw us at these events, we had our event, and we've had a couple of events in the park, we've had fundraisers, out in the community where we're posting up flyers all over the place, asking for, we've had raffles where we've gone to different organizations in town and asked for, raffle items and stuff like that. So I think it's really important, especially for our organization, to really, instead of just reaching out to the people that we tend to cater to, which is the people here in the recovery community, that we enable the people in the recovery community that we're reaching out to learn how to reach out to the community themselves. And that's what we really try to do, is engage our chapter members who come to us in learning what it means to reach out to the community and show the community what we're really doing and why we're having fun and why it's a good time. And engage them to come back. And we've seen a lot of success with that.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to comment on that?
So, you know, I have one really strong experience with this actually. One of the things about AA is that, like, with anonymity, you're not supposed to be really allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or religion. That's part of the traditions inside of it. So you can't really put the name of AA out there onto a lot of public forum, right? Well, one of the things that I choose to do is I let a lot of the people know inside of my own life that I am in recovery if they ask or if I feel the need that they need to know. And one thing that's actually done for me is, like, you know, we post a lot of pictures up. We don't necessarily say that we are part of TXCYPAA. We don't necessarily say, like, that it's even AA related or anything. But people see that we're having fun out there. And, you know, I have a lot of people that I work with, and I work inside of the service industry. You know, drugs are prominent inside of that industry. Alcohol is prominent inside of that industry as well. Well, you know, I'm friends with a lot of these people on social media, and they'll come up to me and they say, you know, it looks like you're having a lot of fun. Well, you know, about 5 of them so far have started talking to me about their own problems with drugs and alcohol. And it's given me a chance to really, like, you know, break it down with them, because they all know that I'm sober, they all know that I'm having fun, and they're able to see that I'm able to do something with my life outside of that world today. I think that's fantastic, and one of these guys have actually gone to meetings with me. You know, if I can impact one person, then I've done my job inside of recovery, and there's nothing else I can ask for with it. So.
Thank you.
I think it's important that we integrate into society, because I mean, if we are to, you know, carry a message, you know, it'd be preaching to the choir if we're carrying the message to the same people. So part of advocating, especially for change in communities, in you know, in our families and our neighborhoods and in our cities, is to be out and integrated in. You know, but we have to do that very carefully as people in recovery. So, you know, I think back to one of my first holiday experiences in early recovery. You know, I had to let, you know, my support network know that I'm going to a family event, that there's going to be more cakes than there are kids, and I need to have my, you know, escape route, my support, and, you know, I had to have my stuff put into place so that I didn't put my recovery in jeopardy. And I think that's what we do. And you had mentioned that, you know, going to South by Southwest, you know, as a whole little recovery group, you know, that's great. That's how we do it. You know, I remember going to my first rave in recovery. My eyes were closed. I was feeling it, and somebody leans over to me and says, "Man, are you rolling?" And I look at my phone and I said, No, I'm not rolling. I have good service. Because, you know, the music was loud, you know. I didn't hear him, but he asked again, and I said, "No, I'm not." And I realized, I'm like, yeah, I can have the same fun, absolutely clean and sober. And, you know, talking about carrying a message, right? Being a beacon for hope in the community where it's least expected. You know, I feel that, again, you know, we have to do this responsibly, and, you know, no one person can go out and be like, yeah, but having the safety net in place and being integrated into society. For Recovery Month last year, Recovery Alliance in Boston, we were interviewed on a local talk radio show, and we talked about, like, how, you know, Austin is one of the top party cities, top drunkest cities. And wouldn't it be great if we had, like, a, you know, absolutely clean and sober, you know, South by Southwest or Austin city limits? And this year we were able to have a small picture of what that would look like. And it was awesome. You know, and the more stuff we do like that in the community, the more we start to change the community around us, right? You know, Doc Hoyas with White Bison out in Colorado talked about healing that community, and not just, you know, removing the individual from the sick community and then dropping them back in. So now we're looking at changing the community and changing how that stigma is seen towards us. So yeah, it's important, but it has to be done very, very carefully.
And then having like fun in a kind of traditional way in recovery. So it was actually a sober dance put on by the Center for Students in Recovery back when I was still a student myself. And we'd invited a bunch of dance-related student organizations to come join us for the sober dance because we're going to have a dance-off with a cash prize. So one way to get people out is free food. Another way is to say cash prizes. It's like pretty good, pretty good. So we had a great turnout, and it was just really cool to see this other group of people who, you know, they're not alcoholics and addicts, so they're not in recovery, but they're also like engaging in fun without substances, right? Just because they really love that thing that they're doing, which is dancing at that moment. And you know, for me, and my experience with the students I work with and with people in recovery I work with, you know I didn't really understand people who had fun without substances. I didn't really believe that that was a thing that people did. And my perceptions about what was normal and what was, you know, a typical way that somebody my age would have fun, it was completely skewed. Partly because I'd surrounded myself with people who drank like me, right? As many of us do. So seeing that was a really clear example of people having fun without substances who didn't have to, right? Like who didn't have to do it out of necessity, like death necessity, like I did. So that was a really awesome experience, and I'm really glad that, you know, the sober dance was open doors in that way, so that I could have that experience pretty early on. So I want to move on to a question that it's about something that's fun when you have it, but really, really not fun when you don't, and that's money. So how do we keep our events low or no cost for the participants, for our organizations? How do we deal with cost?
So as a new organization, we definitely have been through this. And the thing is I have this belief when I first began working with recovery organizations and organizations in general, that if you don't have the money to do something, it's just not going to be successful. You know, if it's not a high budget, you know, all the balloons and whistles and you know all that kind of stuff, it's just not going to be fun. And that is totally not the case. Our recovery in the park event that we threw, that was huge and epic and 100% community involvement and was just beyond our wildest dreams. It cost us a total of $150. And that was just solely from going to these community partners, telling them what we were doing, you know, and reaching out to the community and saying, you know, hey, we want to get together with the community, we want to bring all these people together, we want to do this thing. What can you bring to the table? And how can we help you in return? The space was donated by the city. The movie screen was donated by another organization. All the materials for the sober bar were donated by a local floral event. It's an event planning company in Kerrville that does huge weddings and events here in San Antonio and in Kerrville. And so we had cocktail. It was the works. It was the full works. We had a full working bar with the coolers. With full refrigerated coolers and everything. It was the whole works, and it cost us a total of $150. So I think the most important thing is don't let money be an issue for you. If we get together with a group, if you can get a group of people together to sit and plan and willing to really reach out to the community and get the work forth, things can happen. And if they don't, there are still a lot of things that you can do where you don't have to have any funds to do them. For instance, in our community, we have a wonderful city park that we were so greatly blessed with this last year. It was finished, totally redone, and it's absolutely gorgeous. But we do a lot of events there where there's no cost, where we can just get together, have everybody, if anybody wants to pitch in to bring drinks, or we just really lean on our chapter members to help support that. If you want to get together and you want to do an event, let's all pitch in and let's all come together and do this. But I think it's really just, the biggest thing is learning to network and learning to utilize the resources around you and not get stifled by the idea that this thing may cost, or have an idea in your head of like, oh, it's going to cost us $2,000 to throw this event, which it probably should have, for our recovery in the park event. It really should have probably cost us that much. But we were able to utilize our resources. We use our brains a little bit.
So, one of the things that we're struggling with right now is that we're raising money for a conference by throwing events, which we have to use money in order to, throw these events. Well, I don't know about a lot of people inside of recovery, but I found a lot of ways inside of my addiction to make money without having a lot of money in the first place. That's one of the skills that we really utilize inside of what we do. I mean, there's a lot of ingenious people when it comes to throwing events inside of recovery. And, you see it with all these different communities that are coming together right now for this one event. Our very first event for TXCYPAA, we actually, we decided to throw a date auction. And, that was the most low-cost event that we could possibly think of. It really only cost us $75 for the rent and 15 alcoholics. I mean, there's really no other way to do that. And, that kind of showed us we didn't have to spend a lot of money. We had people that were bringing out food for the potluck, and they were putting it forth donations. Well, one of the other things about it is you have to be fully self-supporting. So through all these other members that were willing to be a part of and be of service to us, we were able to throw this fantastic event, and we made it like a fifth of our money for the entire conference in our first event 11 months before the conference. We've been throwing events like that since, and we've been able to spend a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. But it's been working out for us, and it's all because we collaborate on it. We've been around for 35 years, so we have the past experiences of other conferences before us to go out to. We can talk to all these people and see what's worked for them and see what hasn't, because I'm pretty sure anything that we can think of has been done before too. So it's really cool to see how it works.
Thank you.
Oh, Sierra, money. One of the challenges, the biggest challenge that we face is that we're not blessed with a free public facility. So to host a softball tournament or to host a bowling event, we have to either rent it from the city or the county or go to a commercial facility and rent the facility. Myself, I am extremely blessed that I work in a position, and during the course of my sobriety, I don't make a lot of money, but I was fortunate enough to marry a woman who knows how to manage money. I did not. Nor, if I have it, I'll spend it. Fortunately, marriage has changed that for me. But going into the formation of our committee, I was blessed enough to have some money in savings, and I kind of earmarked part of my inheritance when my dad passed to help fund this. So what it used to be like, it was less than a year ago, I went into it knowing that if I want this to be successful, if I can make my passion for what I want in our mission statement to come true, I knew it would take some investment out of my pocket. And I was willing to set aside that money for the long haul goal. Myself and my co-founder, we both kind of took the burden of the initial upfront cost, with the goal being the event being nonprofit, make just enough money to maybe pay us back, and not really make a whole ton of money, because that wasn't our goal. Our goal was not to make money. Our goal was to put on an event to show people, and that's still our mission statement. Now, in the beginning, and for the first several events that we had, we didn't have the network connection to go out and obtain sponsors that would cover our major costs, field rental, umpire fees, and then the equipment to put on, the game balls, etc. Those are our three main expenses. So we want to keep the cost as low as we could through all the events. We made just enough money repaid most of us as we went along. I'm happy to report today that our committee has no outstanding money owed to anyone. And that greatly because of these, we had some corporate sponsorship and community sponsorship for fields for our recovery month tournament earlier this month. So it's paid off. I'm seeing that now. Our next event scheduled for November, and we've already got networked organizations, part of it from all the events this month, part of the exposure that we've had, and the successes that we've had along the way, where businesses are reaching out to us saying, with your next event, we want to sponsor it, or we want to sponsor a team. So it is growing. The networking is vital. We haven't had the, we haven't taken the opportunity to go to the different organizations and say, put our hand out. Do you want to participate? I know personally, having been around the recovery community for well over 3/4 of my life, being a adult child of an alcoholic, that there are a lot of businesses in this town that are owned by someone in recovery. As a result, our Recovery Month tournament, we had 100 breakfast tacos donated, which was, and none of them were left at the end. Clearly, the free food thing is vital. So those organizations and those networking businesses for people in the recovery community are out there. Again, we're starting to grow, we're starting to see the fruits of our efforts, and the money is, for us, we want to keep it low cost. I also want to throw out there that we don't want, and please take this back to anyone you network with, we never want to turn anyone away from participating in any of our events because they don't have the money. I was a starving college student, and I would have loved the opportunity to participate. So if someone comes to us and say, hey, I want to play, but I don't have the money, we'll say, don't matter, don't worry about it, we got you covered. Or if a team of 10 people show up and they can only come up with $80 for their share of the expenses, okay, that's fine, we'll take what you got. And that way we keep it open, we don't discriminate anybody just because they don't have money. I've been there. Now I'm in a position where I can give back, and I'm so blessed and grateful that I've been able to do that. Hopefully, moving forward, we'll continue to get the community and support through the network, and more organizations will come out. So maybe we can lower the cost even more and get more people to participate and money not be an issue. So thank you to the community. Please network and take it back to those that would like to participate, so we can continue to grow.
I think Mike touches on a good point, is that as people in recovery, we are taught to give back, what has freely been given to us. And there's a lot of talented people in recovery. And there's a lot of us that do own businesses and, that do want to give back. So it's reaching out to those pockets and those people. But also too, I think we need to keep in mind is, good stewardship and not, burning those same people out over and over again. So one way to advocate and get, your message across or what you do across is to go to different organizations and to educate them on what you want. So here in Austin, for our Recovery in the Park event, we talked to a local grocery store and hey, we're going to be right across the street, in the park, would you like to sponsor? And they're like, yeah, we'll give you $50. I'm like, I'll take it. You'll buy ice, I think, things work out in a weird way. We unexpectedly, our soft drink donor got days confused, so we had to go to that same HEB and load up on, soft drinks. And so we go in and the manager welcomes us, hey, let me know if I can do anything. I'm like, yes, absolutely, you can do something for us. We were able to get 30 cases of soda, and they had this deal, buy soda, get chips free, so we got 30 cases of soda, 30 bags of chips, 30 bags of ice for like $80. And that was, that was of course with our, using our nonprofit status to, get the taxes knocked off. But also too, we built up that relationship and that interaction. And he said, well, what's all this for? I'm like, well, I'm glad that you asked, right? Because, we're doing something in your neighborhood, and we approached your team, and we got $50, and maybe next year you guys can, put up a little bit more money. He said, absolutely, just let us know. And I'm like, we won't. So that's the thing is that, how many different other organizations and businesses are out there that just need to, be more visible, right? And, and reaching out to the community and tapping into their talents. All the musicians, they donated their time, right? The sound equipment, donated, right? The food, donated, right? And so it's stuff like that is just like, yeah, it can't, don't let money be a problem, because if it's supposed to happen, it will happen, and I think, for me personally, I rely on my program and what I've been taught, and I have faith. I have faith that as long as I'm doing the next right thing for the right reason, God's got my back.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joseph.
One more quick
Yeah,
thing.
go ahead.
Our t-shirt supplier is the same t-shirt supplier that the Houston organization uses. If you've ever bought t-shirts for any organization, you know that can be a pretty hefty expense. This supplier sells them to us for $5.25
Wow.
which, because of the connections and the networking, made that possible.
Yeah. Thank you. And then one thing I wanted to add, we utilize a lot of these same strategies. Our budget relies on donors from outside the university. But then as part of the university, we get to take advantage of space, like the space that you're in right now, space in the union, discounts at places like the bowling alley that's in the union. And so one thing that we've done is, while we are not necessarily resource rich in terms of, we don't have a big staff, we don't have, a huge army of folks who can really organize stuff. We partner with outside organizations, and we are able to, utilize our discounts on space or on facilities, and have the massive volunteers and staffs from these other organizations come in and help with events and help us get the word out, so we can have these larger scale operations for a relatively cheap cost. And that's part of our relationship with the university. So that's all I wanted to talk about money. In the last few minutes that we have, I just kind of wanted to wrap up with, tell us about an event that really, really just did not work, fell flat, was a total failure. What you learned from that experience, about why it didn't work, if maybe that's still a mystery, that's okay. And then what you're going to take away from that event and use to improve your events going on in the future. And then in order to not end on a negative note, tell us about your absolute hands down best event ever. And I can get us started with the negative one, just to kind of break the ice. Ours was actually, we've tried to do this 2 different times, and that's to host a little viewing party for the Recovery at the White House celebration, which is in conjunction with National Recovery Month. It's put on by the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. It's broadcast on the internet, and you can tweet along, and the person who's moderating the panel will probably read, or will maybe read your tweet on air. And last year we actually got a shout out from the director of the ONDCP, so it was really exciting. But both last year and this year, maybe one other person, maybe 2 other people showed up, besides myself and the other person organizing it. So it's never been very successful. I think that what we've learned is that people don't really get excited about Twitter chats the same way that I get excited about Twitter chats, and that maybe people aren't as much of a federal government nerd as myself and Lori and Reggie, who showed up to our event this year, as we are. So just knowing our audience is something we'll take forward into the future. And then our best event was probably this year's Sober Tailgate. We have a really great location right across the street from the Littlefield Fountain, which is a big landmark and right on the walking path to the stadium. This year, same location as last year, very similar plan, except this year we had a lot more activities going on. We brought in a mobile petting zoo called Tiny Tails to You. Bunnies and a bearded dragon and a chinchilla and a hedgehog and like some other really adorable animals, which was a big hit. We had cornhole, free food, TV playing the games, and water balloons and stuff like that. So it was a lot of fun and definitely was a much bigger draw than last year's tailgate, which was a lot simpler. So that was pretty great. Who would like to go next? Okay, great.
So as soon as you said a bad event, there was an event that came to my mind. And our YPR chapter was brand new. We had joined forces with the Ross Coalition in Kerrville. And we were the newest member of the Ross in Kerrville, which is a very small coalition in Kerrville. But as a new member, we decided we would, they were planning a fundraiser, and so we decided we would take the reins of kind of spearheading that fundraiser for them. YPR was able to make a large donation to get the fundraiser going because there was no funding in the Ross Coalition really at all. And so we were able to kind of get that going. And the event, we raised a lot of money, but there were very few people there. We just happened to have a couple of very large donors in attendance who were very generous. But the event itself, it was very what's the word I'm looking for? Disappointing, I guess. There was just a lot. It was a lot of work, a lot of effort, and I think that what I learned from that event was. When I first got involved with YPR, I had never led an organization at all, and Lizette kind of said it earlier when she was speaking in another panel. I had the authoritative mentality, and like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it all, like I'm going to figure it out, and I don't need anybody else, I'm just going to handle it. And I learned very quickly that does not work. But it was really neat because what came from that event is the people that did show up did ask questions, and people learned what YPR was all about, and our membership took off after that event. But so there were some great things that came out of it, but it was definitely our worst event by far. The best event that we had, it's kind of a toss-up between the Recovering the Park event that we just had last weekend or our volleyball fundraiser. They were both just so engaging. There were so many in attendance. The thing about the volleyball fundraiser that was really neat is we had a professional photographer that came out who actually happened to be a chapter member as well. And took some amazing photographs, got up on a ladder and was able to take some really cool action shots. And so we posted those all up on social media. I mean, and just blanketed social media with every member sharing all the photos. And the amount of interest that we got from that event. And then same thing with our Recovering the Park event. We took tons of pictures and posted them up on social media. So those two events, I can't really decide which of the two was the best, but definitely a total opposite of the fundraiser event that we first did.
Thank you. All right, who's up next? Thank you.
So, worst event. In the beginning of us planning out this conference, one of the major mistakes that we made was we started deciding that we were going to plan a lot of events very close to each other. And the reason that was a mistake is because we realized very quickly that we were going to be burned out because we got burned out. And when you're throwing an event that's supposed to be fun, the biggest thing that you have to do is make sure that you're having fun too, otherwise other people aren't going to be having fun. Being burnt out, we were really sick of each other at that point. We've been spending a lot of time together trying to get these things planned on top of all of our normal everyday lives as well. And we ended up having this trivia night. I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot of competitive alcoholics in this world. And, you know, that character defect can come out in a lot of different ways when people are tired. You know, our host committee, it wasn't that terrible. It really wasn't that terrible, but you could tell that there was a lot of stress going on at the event because we had another event that we were planning for the next week as well, and we were all stressing about that. You know, the people that came out, they were really great about it. We ended up all walking out and letting the contestants compete themselves instead of us being on the teams with them, and just letting them have a great time. And you know, it turned from being a bad event to a good event. But I'd have to say that, you know, that was probably our worst mistake, was having so many events in 1 month that we just couldn't keep up. Our best event, I would have to say, was yesterday. It was that drag competition. It was Miss TXCYPAA for the fellas. The coolest part about it is that we had people from each bid committee for the next conference come out. We had Kerrville come out, we had Houston, we had San Antonio, Dallas, everywhere came. There was actually a guy that flew in from Chicago to be a part of this event. It was amazing to see the outreach and like just so much support from all the recovery community. You know, these guys that are professional drag queens came out and they gave their time, they gave all their equipment, whatever, for free. I mean, they did it because they knew that they were going to be helping somebody else. They did it for the children. It was really amazing. I mean, a lot of heart and sweat and blood went into this event, and you know, it pulled out to be like one of the most fun times I've ever had in my life. So.
Thank you. That's great. And we just have a couple more minutes.
She said keep it short.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to start with second best, worst, and then best.
Okay.
Because second best and worst tie together.
Okay.
Last spring, we were asked by the Houston committee to host an annual complete tournament. Normally we do a little pool play where you separate off into divisions, but this particular tournament is one big tournament where everybody goes into the same. Team from Denver came here, teams from Houston came up here, and we had 12 teams. Compared to our previous 4 events leading up to that, it was a huge success. And we were so enthused and excited because of the participation. We set up our next event as a 100% draft tournament. Regardless of skill level, we're going to draft evenly. Everybody's going to be put into different groups, and we're going to draft evenly. So all the teams across, hopefully, will all be evenly matched. And everybody will continue to have fun. We got at least 120 people we hope will come back. And it was in the middle of the summer. We set it on early start time. When it came time for the first game, there was about 20 people, 24 people there. That's only enough for about two teams and a little more. So it was, I don't know why, but it was less received by the participants who had come out on a regular basis leading up to that. Maybe the timing and maybe the fact that it was the middle of the summer and hot. It ended up, though, in that event where we got, ended up with like 3 teams, and we just put everybody out on the field, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and separated the teams that way. Rather than a true draft out of a hat kind of tournament. So it ended up being successful. And then our best event to date by far was the National Recovery Month tournament we held on the 4th. With 14 participants, the exposure that we got, more teams came from, the most amount of teams we had from out of town were there, Smithville, Bastrop, and Elgin, and teams from Houston participated. So, and for us, that was our whole goal. My initial response to what's the worst event is I can't say any of them truly were bad because we accomplished our mission. We showed new people that we recognize. There was a gentleman in the room earlier today that at our, not the Recovery Month tournament before, he had 1 day of sobriety. He was in the audience today. Our goal we reached. So with that, all of ours have been a success. We've accomplished our goal and we'll continue to, hopefully continue to do so as we go forward.
Great, thank you.
Now with the 1 second that I have left.
Yeah.
You're just over me. The worst is I would say the worst experiences have been when we don't include the community's involvement. I think the participatory process is very important, and although I have some great ideas, not everybody likes those ideas. So, you know, if I were to come in, if I have an idea and I say, let's do this, and nobody's like, dude, that's lame, and nobody's gonna come. So we've had experiences where, you know, when we dictate the process, no one comes out. And that just reminds us that, you know, we need to be accountable to the community. The absolutely best event was last weekend's Recovery in the Park. We had over 600 people, and, you know, we did that for less than $5,000. And all the, you know, the community was really involved in that process. People volunteering the day of, signing up to volunteer ahead of time, and just getting stoked for next year. And I have, you know, organizations calling me and saying, hey, so you need sponsorship next year? I'm like, absolutely, I will take your money. So something to learn, include the recovery community, because it should be for us without us.
Okay, thank you so much for sticking around for our panel, and help me thank our panelists.